This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 167 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, I am talking with the owner of InfluenceKit, and we're going to be diving into how do you measure influence? What does that exactly look like? Now, the great thing about this interview is they actually have a tool that you can use in order to measure that, because I know I have so many people always asking me, I don't know what I'm worth. I don't know what I should be pricing. And it's largely because they don't know their value. So this interview is going to walk you through how to actually determine that. And they're providing you with a 14-day free trial so that you can test out InfluenceKit and figure out your value. All right, let's dive in. Hi, Bruno. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to talk more about InfluenceKit and how to actually measure influence. It's one of the questions I feel like I get asked all the time. But before we dive into that, will you introduce yourself and your business?
Sure. So my name is Bruno Bornstein. I'm one of the founders of InfluenceKit. InfluenceKit is a web-based software product to help influencers prove their value and make more money. It really came out of what I did running a blog for almost 10 years. I ran a blog called Curbly, and we needed this tool to help us stay organized and also understand and prove our value to sponsors. And so that's where it came out of.
So we are definitely going to be able to answer that question of how to really measure influence. So let's start. One of the biggest struggles for influencer is how to actually, of course, measure that influence. What platforms do you believe should go into measuring influence?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard, right? Because you are creating content on as many platforms as you can, and you don't really have the luxury of just picking and choosing. You want to create content everywhere. And, it used to be just your blog, but now it's your blog and social and YouTube and TikTok and push notifications. I mean, every place that you can reach somebody you want to try to do that. So, rather than just picking one or two, I really always say, try to measure everything. And I know that that's hard because you are creating content on a lot of different platforms. But if you're creating a newsletter that you send out to, your subscribers that's talking about a brand or a product, you can't really afford to not measure that because that's value that you're delivering. So it's important to try to measure everything.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I love the piece that you said about as far as really taking a look at, there's so many things that we are trying to do, and then how really understanding each piece, because it is each piece that can go into, you never know what's going to do really, really well. What may affect your Instagram influencers may turn around and do better with your email list. So being able to measure all that is just so important. Is there an industry standard that you found to determine the success of an influencer?
There really isn't. I mean, definitely brands are looking for certain metrics, and those are, broadly impressions and engagements. So they definitely want to know how many people saw this thing, heard about us, even could have potentially seen our logo somewhere. And then engagement, like how interactive were they? How much did people actually sort of engage with this message or the content? But how you measure that is complicated, and there really isn't a good standard. When it comes to engagement, your engagement on a social network might be really different than your engagement on your blog post, right? And so you can't necessarily compare those things apples to apples, right? Like, how do you measure the value of 10 comments on a blog post versus the value of 10 clicks on a pin? I mean, they're not really exactly the same.
Right.
So yeah, to your question, no, there really isn't a standard yet. I think we are it will start to get better and more of a a common understanding will start to develop. But I think still at this point, like it's really about being able to tell a convincing story. And that's a little bit different than a standard. There's not just like some number that you can just like show them and then that will be it. You have to be able to tell a story. And that is, here's all the numbers. Here's, where we performed strongest. Here's where we didn't perform as strong, and communicate to whoever your partner is, why you were able to provide value.
Yes. And I think that it goes back to the fact that influencer marketing, it is about telling that story, not only with your numbers, but also with your content and connecting with your audience. So I think when we go back to influencer marketing being about helping a brand build its brand awareness, we can then try to tell that story through the numbers and the different data that is out there. So if we wanted to determine our success as an influencer, what should we do first?
Well, I mean, I would say start with what I started with, which is capture everything. Like that's the first thing. You need to have a system that allows you to keep track of everything that you do for a particular brand, whether that's a spreadsheet or a Word doc or InfluenceKit or some other tool. It doesn't matter, but you really need to know what every single piece of content that you created. Once you do that, you can start measuring things like impressions, unique impressions, engagements, and sort of being able to better understand what the overall sort of performance of that package of content was. That's going to really help boost your confidence and make it easier for you to tell that story and to communicate your value. I mean, it's really, really hard. The thing that I notice the most when I'm talking to influencers is that they don't often know their own value. They don't know how their stuff performed. A lot of times they don't know if whatever number they came up with was good or bad. Was the brand happy? Were they sad? But you can't do any of that. You can't know any of that if you're not measuring it. So I think it's really important to capture everything and then start, measuring how those pieces of content are performing.
Yes. And I like to think of that as kind of like your case study. So you might do a blog post that isn't necessarily sponsored, because one of the biggest things I hear a lot of times from influencers is the fact that, well, I've never worked with a brand. I've never done a partnership before. So I have no idea what to give them as like my baseline numbers or how many impressions. I don't know. So my suggestion is always do a case study, see what that would look like if you were to kind of run it like it was a partnership or a paid collaboration, so that you can track everything and get all of that data.
Exactly. And it's so funny because when people say that, sometimes people say, well, I've never worked with this brand. I'm like, well, probably you have. Chances are you have worked with the brand. You just didn't get paid for it because you're talking about brands all the time. This actually just happened with my co-founder, Chris, the other day where, I was kind of looking at their site and they had this amazing blog post about a product. And I was like, Chris, was this sponsored? And he was like, no, we just did it. And I was like, well, you've got an amazing case study here to show this brand. So chances are you already have content about this brand. If you don't, it's relatively easy to come up with, like you said, to do a case study that you can show a brand. I know that what feels overwhelming is like this idea of like, oh my gosh, I have to measure everything. I have to do every single like piece of content. It really is about developing a system. You need a system. You cannot do this sort of just like on the whim, winging it like, oh, I think I'll just do some case studies today. Like you have to have a system, because what happens is, a brand is going to come to you and say, hey, we'd really like to work with you, but we want to see, like how your content about our product might perform. And that's not the time for you to like go crazy and freak out and create a case study. Like it's too late then. Like, it's too much work. It's too stressful, too overwhelming. You have to have these things kind of building as you go. So you really need to develop a system where you track everything, you categorize it. If a home improvement brand comes to me tomorrow, I can immediately go back and find, okay, what was the last big home improvement project we did and how did it perform and where did it perform strongest? And I can have those numbers back to the brand in an hour, and you have to have a system that lets you do that.
So prior to InfluenceKit, I would always do my crazy spreadsheets, and it would be so time consuming to go back to be able to get the updated results to track everything.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how InfluenceKit actually provides influencers with that way to be able to better measure their influence.
Right. I mean, like I said, I'm a blogger too, right? And I was the same. I know this is exactly what happened to me. A brand would come to me, they'd say, we want to give you a bunch of money, but we want to see how your stuff is going to perform. And I would just like act all, calm and cool. And then the minute I got off the phone or the email, I would freak out and like go into Google Analytics and pull the numbers and try to find the pins that we did for like something related to this brand. I mean, it's a mess. InfluenceKit really flips that process on its head. What we do is it provides you with the system so that you can track all of your content on an ongoing basis. The idea with InfluenceKit is not like, freaking out at the end and putting a bunch of numbers in, pulling a report and showing it to the brand. The idea is you can track your stuff as you go so that by the time a brand asks you for numbers, you just click view report and it will show you all your numbers. Like the details of that are really simple. Like you just put in the URLs to all the content that you've created for any particular product or a blog post. You just dump them onto InfluenceKit, and then we pull all the stats for you automatically from wherever those stats live.
One of my favorite things is that it's real time. So that once they have that URL for the report, they all just have to open it back up. And if they looked at it today and then they looked at it 2 weeks from now, it's going to have the updated information of how that pin might be doing or how it's doing in Google search for the actual traffic,
right.
Which I think is the most time consuming part that can become an issue for influencers is when they are trying to stay up to date with that, especially once it is a paid campaign. Absolutely. But you also take it and make it pretty, which for me is something that I am not very good at when it comes to graphics and making it look like it's presentable. Yeah. I think InfluenceKit just takes it and puts it so that you can see the impressions, all of the data. Makes it really simple to see. One of my favorite features that you guys have added is Instagram stories. Because for the longest time, that's where I feel like I get a ton of engagement. I have a lot of people that will interact and engage with me over there. And it's not always easy to capture the insights in Instagram for it the way that you want it to be because of that 24-hour expiration. But with the way that your software captures it real time and then just updates it, it makes it so easy. Once we actually have that baseline for it to pitch the brands that we know, use, and love, how does InfluenceKit help us show the brands the success of a campaign?
Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just thinking of starting a podcast, you need to listen to Buzzcast from the folks at Buzzsprout. Here we go! Buzzcast covers everything a podcaster should know, from marketing strategies and how to make money from your podcast to the latest and greatest tech and industry insights to keep you on the cutting edge. Follow Buzzcast by clicking the link in the description or go to buzzcast.buzzsprout.com and keep podcasting.
So what you get when you finish putting all your stuff into InfluenceKit, your Instagram stories, your Facebook, your pins, your blog post, we spit out a report, which is basically like a web page that's, like you said, is dynamic, that shows not only all of the important metrics that you need to show a brand, impressions, engagements, comments, likes, reactions, all that stuff, but it also showcases the content. And that's really, really important. The report that we give you to share with the brand is not just numbers. It's not a spreadsheet.
Right.
And that's on purpose. We've built that report intentionally to really highlight the content, because at the end of the day, you only control the performance of your content to a certain extent. This has happened to me. You create the most amazing blog post or video, and you don't always know how that's going to perform. And so but what you do control is the content that you create. And so at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and proving your value to the sponsor. So by highlighting the content itself, we're making sure that whoever's on the other end of that report, whether it's an account manager or an agency person or somebody in-house at the brand, that they're seeing the content that you create. So think about this, like you're working with a brand, they might be working with 20 influencers this quarter, and they don't have time to like monitor your Instagram feed, your Instagram stories. Like chances of them actually seeing the Instagram stories that you created, not super high. Even something like a blog post, if they're sitting around in their marketing meeting talking about their latest influencer campaign, they don't really have time to click through to look at all the blog posts. So you want to make sure that your content is really, really easy for them to see. And that's what our reports do. They make it so that if they're sitting at a meeting and they bring up your InfluenceKit report, they're just scrolling through all of the pretty pictures that you did and seeing, how much time and care you put into creating the content. Then if the content also performed really well, which hopefully it did, that's just an added bonus. But if it didn't perform well, which sometimes happens, at least they know that they have a trusted partner in you who can create amazing, beautiful, on-message content that they're going to be able to go back to you again and again. And that's really an important piece of it too.
Absolutely. Now, you guys are offering a special discount for my podcast listeners. Can you tell them a little bit about it?
Sure. So we're really excited because we know that the people who listen to your podcasts are the people who should be using InfluenceKit. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. So we're going to be giving anybody who signs up via your referral link a 40% off for 4 months on our unlimited plan. So we have 3 tiers within InfluenceKit. Our highest tier is called the Pro plan. It's really the plan that makes the most sense if you're creating a lot of reports, doing a lot of sponsored content. It's a really good plan that allows unlimited usage. So basically there's no limits on what you can do with it. Normally it's $99 a month, and we're going to be giving your listeners 40% off for 4 months. So it's a really good deal. It has all of our features. Like for example, you mentioned Instagram stories. The Pro plan comes with the ability to track your stories automatically within InfluenceKit. It comes with Report Builder, which lets you build really custom aggregated reports. So, basically it's like the Cadillac of our plans. And then, after that period, after the 4 months, if you decide that you need to, downgrade to a different plan or, change to a different tier, that's totally fine. We want to make sure that your listeners get a chance to, try the best of InfluenceKit out for a long period of time. So 4 months.
I love that. And with that, that'll also, so there's 2 different types of listeners I feel like I have. There's a set of listeners that haven't started to work on brands yet, haven't done any sponsored work yet, which this is perfect for because it gives you that chance to do that case study that we're talking about. And then I also have the other side of it where there's a lot of bloggers that have, and influencers that have worked on sponsored content, but they haven't quite made it long-term yet. And I think this is what makes you stand out. This is what can turn it into long-term because brands will see the value that you bring. They're going to see how well you professionally can put things together for them. And it's going to make you stand out. So whether you fall on which spectrum it is as listeners, definitely want to take advantage of that trial as well as that 40% off that will continue.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is, like I said, the Pro plan doesn't have any limits. So you can actually come in and create retroactive reports. I always forget to mention this, but I'm remembering now. You can come into InfluenceKit and drop in all of your content for the last year. I mean, just go through and put in all the links. You can generate 100 reports on the Pro plan. And then, once your 4 months is up or you decide to downgrade to a lower plan, that's fine. But your reports for that past year will still be there. And those are your case studies. Those are going to be like at your fingertips, ready to go whenever the next brand contacts you. So I really think it's a great way of just building up this kind of asset, this backlog of reports that you can use to tell your story and to negotiate as you're talking to sponsors going forward.
Absolutely. I have a tendency of using it as well as an editorial calendar because I feel like it just keeps me organized to be able to see what campaigns I'm working on, but then also the content that may not be sponsored, but I'd still like to be able to have that information to see how is it doing over time. So and it's a great way to be able to tell, well, this kind of content is hitting better with my audience than this kind of content is because you're getting the access to those reports. So if you've been one that's listening that feels like I really don't know what my people want, I feel like I'm just throwing spaghetti on a wall, you're going to want to sign up for this and take advantage of that feature for sure.
Yeah, I think that having a really solid editorial calendar and an editorial strategy is the most important thing that a blogger can do. It really sets you up for success in everything else that you do. And the most successful content creators out there, if you talk to them, if you look at how they run their businesses, they do it with a strong editorial strategy. They don't just wake up in the morning or, some Monday morning and say like, well, what am I going to write about today? They know what holidays are coming up, what seasonal things are coming up, what brands are working on, and they're planning well in advance. And to do that, you need a strong system. InfluenceKit is really built to be that system. I think it's really a great way to help you get organized so that what you're working on, what's coming up next, what could potentially be sponsored, which sponsors have I talked to, and you can track all of the performance for everything that you do.
Yes. And if you have a long-term contract, you can, like you said, if you haven't been using InfluenceKit and you've worked with them in the past, you can then add that into that campaign so that you're providing that brand with all of the data over however long that you've worked with them. There's just so many features. I go in there every time and I'm like, oh, I need to add this. And I need to add this. Yeah. It's great the way that the system works.
I should mention to you, because we just launched this, we launched a new feature called Deliverable Search, which is really cool. Basically what it does is it crawls all of your content on every social platform and it brings it into InfluenceKit in a searchable way. So what that means is you can go into InfluenceKit and say, I want to look for anything with hashtag sponsored, and it will show you results from Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all in one place. And then you can just grab those things and dump them into a report. So it makes that process of collecting things way, way easier. So like, for example, let's say that you're somebody who's written a lot about choose a product, Cricut or something like that.
Yes.
You go into Deliverable Search, type in Cricut, and it'll find everything from your social media platforms that you've written about them and pull it in. So it's really slick.
That's awesome. Because I know I've had numerous influencers that have come to me and said, I have this one post that goes bananas. I want to approach a baking soda company because let's say it's a cleaning kind of thing. And I want to be able to show that I have this. I know this is done really well. Can I use that? Should I be trying to put a link into it? What would that look like? But if you can go to them and say, look, this is where I've talked about baking soda and haven't said a specific brand. Let's get you in there with the next post and link that to the rest.
Yes, exactly. I really think like you have to look at it as an investment in going forward in your process for pitching brands. I also encourage people to look at it as something that they can charge for, right? You can charge for reporting. You can go to a brand and say, it takes me time to pull together these reports for you. If I have to pay for a tool like InfluenceKit, that takes my money. So you should be adding that into your report contracts. You should be going to brands and saying, here's my standard rate. Here's what I charge for a pin and a blog post. And I can provide, weekly or monthly or daily reporting with InfluenceKit for an additional fee. And I highly encourage people to do that. And I think brands get it, because they don't mind paying when they know that they're going to get a report that's cohesive, consistent, and up to date. It's going to save them a lot of time over what they do now, which is like you sending them screenshots of Google Analytics and maybe a screenshot of an Instagram stories, stats page. With this, like they know like, oh, I can see everything in one place. Okay, that's worth it to me because somebody on the brand side is saving money or time by not having to collect all those stats themselves.
That's so smart. Because I was just saying when I teach inside Pitch Perfect Pro, I teach them to put together a proposal where it kind of gives the deliverables, and adding reporting to that would be so easy because it's something that many of them are already doing anyways. And we do the package price so that when they say, oh, you can't quite meet that price, you take something else out and now it's more negotiable.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, negotiating is art, right? And I'm not saying you always have to get your money for the reporting, but put that thing in there as something you would, even put it in and strike it out. Like do that. Put it in and say, reporting is $500, but I'm not going to charge you for that. It's not, I mean, it might, I know that like might seem like sneaky or something, but it's not. Like you're providing value to them, whether you're actually going to charge them or but you need to show them there's value here.
Right.
I may not be charging you money for it. I might be crossing it off of the deliverables list, but they should understand that you providing them with comprehensive, updated reporting is really valuable.
Right.
And you should make sure that they get that.
No, absolutely. I entirely agree. Where are the best places to follow along with InfluenceKit?
Well, so we are on Instagram and Twitter at @InfluenceKit. Interestingly, for a company that's all about influencers, we don't do a whole lot on those profiles yet. We're working to ramp that up this year. The truth is, we're really focused right now on building out the product, talking to our customers, and making improvements to InfluenceKit based on what they tell us. So that just doesn't leave us a lot of time for doing social media. That said, we are making an effort to be where our customers are this year, and that's really primarily conferences. So we're going to be at a lot of the bigger conferences this year, whether that's as a sponsor or as an attendee. So definitely look for us at some of those blogging conferences, food conferences, travel conferences. We're really hoping to get to as many as we can.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that we do that. So if you are all listening in, make sure that you hop over to the show notes so that you can take advantage of the discount that you're getting, as well as the trial, and take advantage of just figuring out and understanding better what your worth is by tracking in a case study form, whatever it might be. Bruno, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and to kind of inform my audience about what you guys are up to. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny. We love what you're doing in terms of teaching influencers and supporting content creators. And we feel like our mission really aligns with that. So we really are grateful that you were able to have us on.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Well, there you have it. So I want to make sure that you take advantage of this 14-day free trial. This is not only meant for you to use just when you're working with a sponsor. Like you heard us talk about in the episode, it's really important that you know your value before you go to pitch yourself, before you want to work with the brand. So use that 14-day trial to set up that test run of what a brand collaboration could possibly look like. It's that case study that you're looking to have to know what your reach and your impressions would be. And InfluenceKit is providing that 14-day free trial for you so that you can make sure that you figure that out and know it for yourself. If you're listening to the episode, I want to make sure that if you would put it out on Instagram stories, take a screenshot, tag me at Jenny_Melrose. I'd love to hear what your takeaway is from this episode. And I want to know that you are making sure you take advantage of that 14-day free trial. So send me a message and let me know what your impressions are looking like for that case study that you're running on your own content, so that when you go to pitch to brands, you are ready to do so with actual numbers and a case study of what you can provide them in order for them to earn their return of investment with you for that collaboration. All right, guys, until next time, I will talk to y'all then.